Welcome to another edition of Trending with the Tribune, and I'm your host, June, of Let's Talk, all things speech, business, and motivation. Today, my special guest is Craig Fitzhugh. He is running for governor of the state of Tennessee in our upcoming election. Mr. Fitzhugh is currently the minority leader in the Tennessee General Assembly. Mr. Craig Fitzhugh, welcome to Trending with the Tribune.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you so much. Well, as you know, we are in the middle of a huge election, and the community, they want to know so many things.
Good.
And the biggest thing at the top of the list, since you are such a huge advocate for education, I have to talk about this. Now, in the Nashville community in particular, there were over 21 schools that ranked in the lowest 5% in regards to performance. Now, as governor, what would you propose to help lower those numbers, and how would you as governor fund this initiative?
I think the most important thing that I can speak of as far as public education, I think I sort of have a bookend approach. One bookend is I'm convinced of the importance of a child being able to read at an early age. So I'm in favor of pre-K for every student, every child. And I think the important thing we need to do is make sure that child can read on grade level by the third grade. If that child can read to learn then, that child can learn to read after that. In other words, I got it confused. If that child can learn to read by the third grade, then that child can read to learn after that, learning about him or herself, his or her family, their background, their opportunities, our country, the Constitution, nature, mathematics, all that type of thing. And then at the other end, I think that the important thing is that we all want a high school education, but we know now that that's not enough. You need some post-secondary education, whether it be a 4-year degree, a 2-year degree, a degree from the TCATs, our Tennessee College of Applied Technology, or some training for a particular skill, an apprenticeship, an internship, specialized training to get those 21st century jobs. And then in the middle, between those bookends, we need to make sure our teachers are supported, that they're paid well, and that they want to teach, and we want to keep them here teaching. So that's sort of a three-pronged approach. Now, how will I pay for it? I think education is the most important thing we do. So we have to make room in our budget for it. But we need to let our teachers know, and our children know, and our parents know that we are committed to their child and to their future.
So, Mr. Fitzhugh, can I confirm that you just said that you want to prepare our children to be able to graduate from high school and prepare them to enter the workforce?
Yes, and sometimes it may take, it will always take some more education and training, but it needs to be affordable for them and accessible for them. And we need to do whatever we can do. And we have some good programming in this state that can do it, but we need to make sure it's there for everybody.
Okay, now Tennessee, of course, in Nashville, becoming the it city, we are able to support an NFL team. You have an NBA team in Memphis, plus you have the hockey team, and you have the home of country music. So there's a lot of money in the state of Tennessee. So there is something that is called surplus money. Now, with this surplus money, the current governor, he's hesitating about using some of this funding for public schools. I would like to know, would you be interested as governor for using some of this surplus money? And I understand it's well over $250,000. Would you as governor use some of this surplus money for public schools?
As a matter of fact, I have a bill that's passed the House of Representatives that puts together an endowment for education. It uses some of our rainy day fund and puts it in a trust fund that we use the earnings from it for education. The core or the corpus of the fund doesn't go away. It can still be used when we get into a type for rainy day purposes, but we will use the earnings from that to set up an endowment, much like colleges, like TSU has and other colleges, Vanderbilt, and every college has an endowment where they have a corpus of money, and then they use the earnings off of it to fund their higher education. We do the same thing for pre-K through 12. And it may take a while, but we've done this for endowed professorships at different universities, and we have made a tremendous amount of money and been able to hire a lot of people. So I think the same thing will work for education. It will take a time to build it up, but it will not put our rainy day fund at risk. It will be something that we can count on in the future.
Okay, now I understand that there is a bill with your name on it called the Fitzhugh-Yarborough bill. What exactly is that?
That's just what I proposed to you. It's an education endowment bill that uses that concept of having a trust fund, whereby the earnings off of that trust fund go for pre-K through 12th grade education. That's the bill I just described.
Okay, so that's the name of it.
Yes.
Now, as an advocate of education, do you have a vision for DACA, the Dreamers?
Oh, yes. In the legislature, I was on the education committee where the Dreamers came through, and through that particular committee. And in Tennessee, the key is what we can do in Tennessee. Of course, it's a federal that the Congress has to deal with, and they've not dealt with it yet. But what we wanted to do was give children who know no other home than Nashville or Tennessee, since they've been some as young as a year old, and they go all the way through high school. They have excellent grades. They graduate, and then they find out that they can get into any college they want to in Tennessee, but they cannot get in-state tuition. They have to pay that huge out-of-state. So that really, really limits them. I voted for that bill. It lost on the House floor by only 2 votes, but I am for it. I've been for it. I think it's not a Republican or a Democratic issue. It's a moral issue.
Okay. Now, of course, we can't talk about DACA without bringing up immigration.
Right.
Now, a little while back, a bill was passed in the Tennessee House that approved a bill to ban sanctuary cities in Tennessee.
Right.
And this bill required local authorities to comply with the federal government's request to hold undocumented immigrants. Now, as a governor representing the state of Tennessee, how will you influence immigration reform politics?
Well, the first thing I'm hopeful is that bill hasn't been signed by Governor Haslam yet. And I'm hopeful that he will have the courage to veto that bill, because that bill there was a large contingent of folks that didn't want that bill, Republicans and Democrats alike. We tried to stop it, and we almost did in the committee, but it ended up passing. It's a bill that really is more political than substantive. We already have a bill that prevents sanctuary cities. This one would go much farther. It would put, I believe, our police and sheriff's departments at risk for some of the things the bill required to do, and they're not for the bill. It's a very poorly written bill, and it's one that I think needs a veto. If it isn't vetoed, and if it doesn't, I would do my best to try to invalidate that bill next year.
Now, sir, right now in the state of Tennessee, there are between 1 and 6 people dying every day in regards to this opioid crisis. Now, what would your approach as governor be to fight this ongoing opioid crisis in the state of Tennessee?
Well, it is a crisis. It's moving so fast. I will commend Governor Haslam for the plan that he put forth, because it is a broad plan. It's like a wide river. It's broad. But at the same time, it's like a small river in the middle of summer. It's not very deep. And we don't have the assets, the revenues that he committed to the plan, the money that he committed to it. It just falls far short. In fact, some hospitals around the country are expending more money per year on the problem than we are in Tennessee. So even though he's got the right idea with treatment, certainly get the dangerous stuff off the market, the fentanyl and that type of thing that's in the secondary market, we need to get rid of that. We need to educate our folks, and we need to provide rehabilitation and treatment for them.
As a candidate for governor, what position do you take on legalized marijuana?
I have a position on that, and I've sort of evolved over the years. My slogan for this is, I don't want bad laws to get in the way of good medicine. And I think our laws that prohibit it are not right. So I'm for it. I think it ought to be regulated. I think it ought to be doctor approved, and it ought to be taxed. But with those things, I am certainly for it. I know it would help in many situations, and there's no reason why Tennessee shouldn't do it.
What happens when a police officer decides to use his own personal discretion to arrest or not to arrest? Where's the law for that?
Well, we have to have competent law enforcement, and we can't use that personal discretion on one particular person and another particular person. We have to be consistent. But I'll tell you this, I think the law ought to be that we're incarcerating way too many people for these, quote, minor type of offenses. And we're filling our jails and prisons, and it's costing us a very significant amount of money. And we need to relook at that. We just need to relook at that whole thing, because we can't continue to spend more money on jails than we do on schools. We have to get our priorities right. And that means we need to make a change in some of these offenses that send people to jails and prison when they could be remedied with fines or some type of lesser punishment than what we do now.
Okay. Well, Mr. Craig Fitzhugh, in closing, is there anything else you would like to share with the community about your platform? Well,
first of all, I want to thank you for those very good questions. We talked about it before we started. You said you did your homework, and you certainly did. I appreciate that. You know, I'm a rural guy. I was the first person in my family to go to college, as was my wife. My whole family has been educated in the public schools. My children, my grandchildren that are old enough to go to school are in public school, so I'm very proud of that. I've run a small business, and that's a bank that I work in is the one that did it's now up closer to $500,000 for school teachers in our local area. So I'm very proud of the fact that I make a payroll. I know business, and then I've had the ability to be in the legislature for 24 years. And about half that time, when we're in the legislature from January to June or so, May or April, I live in Nashville. So I've spent a lot of time here, and I know this town pretty well. I love it. It's got a few problems, growing pains, as you might say, but it's a wonderful town. As is Memphis and Knoxville and Chattanooga, the larger cities, and then our rural communities. I think I know this state. I think I can lead the state through my experience and body of work, and I just hope that the folks in your market and the folks that hear this and read your newspaper will give me a shot. Look me up on Facebook or Twitter and on my website, and I'd love to talk to people about the issues.
Well, there you have it. This has been another issue of Trending with the Tribune, and today my guest has been Craig Fitzhugh, Minority Leader in the Tennessee General Assembly, your candidate for governor that will get the job done for residents of Tennessee in regards to education and health care. Get out to the polls in November and make your vote count.
Actually, August 1st. The primary's in August.
Well, you heard it from him. He said it first. Get out and vote early. Get out and vote early and make your vote count. And until next time, I am June with Let's Talk All Things Business, Speech, and Motivation. Make sure you visit the website at TennesseeTribune.com. And until next time, bye now.